Photographer.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it's a friend. Ayomide.
Interesting.
Or do you mean the designs?
No, the photograph, your pictures, like the one on your blog, the one on your Medium.
Oh,
Um,
those are different people at different time.
okay. Maybe it's you that knows how to pose.
Actually, it's more of design intuition. Actually, I don't execute design, but I have some level of design intuition, so I know how to work with creatives. It's just that balance.
Okay.
All right. So good morning, everyone, or whatever time you're going to listen to this. I'm really excited to have an amazing individual in another conversation about the venture matrix for the future of Africa. His name is Mimshach Obioha, and he is the executive director for Ventures Platform Foundation. We're discussing Series 3, The Matrix, where we get to engage stakeholders who are investors. So we're trying to understand what is the investment opportunity of the venture matrix proposition. And joining this conversation is Mimshach, as I've said. So good morning, Mimshach. How you doing?
Hi, good morning. My pleasure to be here.
All right, awesome. So we're having what we call the forum on the venture. And how we do it is that it is bashed into 15-minute sections of 4 different conversations, right? We start off with the trivia, trying to establish a connect, trying to know who our guest is. Then we move into the discourse, where we try to evaluate the reality of the conversation, understanding the core aspect of the conversation and how the conversation will be directed. Then we'll have a strategy session where we get to learn from your experience and also learn from your perspectives on the issue we'll be discussing. And then we have the forum, which is, your insights into the one thing you think we need to do now as the undergraduate community. So first off, yes, what were the dysfunctions within the undergraduate community that influences what you do today?
Influence is what I do.
Yes.
So I'm not particularly working within undergraduate community. So it's not more like, it's not like a dysfunction within the undergraduate community that's influencing my work. However, there are parts of the dysfunction within the educational system that affects my work. Let's put it that way.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I remember when we started in 2016, the vision was grand, was big, was huge. We wanted to enable entrepreneurs on the continent, particularly those that leverage innovation and technology to solve some of the most pressing problems or plug in infrastructural gaps or value chain gaps. And we were quite ambitious with what we wanted to do. We were also quite optimistic. We believed that we would have a plethora of great innovative solutions and startups and entrepreneurs and innovators. And I remember when we started, one of the things that we did was to go and ask other VCs before us, other accelerators particularly before us. Before we started, no accelerator in Nigeria had done 2 cohorts. They had only done 1 batch and ended. 1 batch and ended.
Okay.
And so it couldn't be a coincidence. And one of the things that my mentor and the founder of Ventures Platform usually says is, you can't assume you are the smartest person in the world, right?
True.
And that's one problem that lots of founders have, the whole superiority complex. Like, nobody else thought about this but me. That's not true. Chances are. So we wanted to go find out from them, why is this? Why do you do 1 batch and then you end your program? And one of the things so a couple of them were quite evasive with the question, but a couple of people that responded were very direct. One of them, who I won't mention his name, said that in the whole continent, there are only about 3 fundable startups. And we're like, come on. Even though today we still think that that's quite an over-exaggeration of the pessimism of the ecosystem, but it's quite true that there is a dearth in getting quality founders. But we still went in anyway. We're quite optimistic. We're going to do this batch model of investment through an accelerator. The first batch, we barely were able to get 7 companies into the batch, even though we had enough money to invest in 10. Yeah. So when you hear people say that there's capital, but there isn't people to get it, it's quite true also. So
Wow.
we couldn't get 10 companies which we wanted. So our first assumption was that we were new, we were not known, we didn't have a name, we didn't have a brand. So maybe the great founders were not looking to apply to us for funding. So we really did well by the guys, the first set of guys. We did well. We provided $20,000. And one of the things that we did was we actually invested in them in actual dollars. So typically what we found that before that investors would tell you, we'll give you dollars, but they'll give you Naira at CBN rates, which we know isn't really dollars, right? But we did everything by the book. We made known our terms from the start. So from the call for application, you knew you were getting $20,000 for 10% equity. It was very direct, very straightforward. Everybody was getting the same thing. It was a blanket evaluation. After the first batch, we said, okay, now let's go and do a second batch. We are better prepped. People know us. We have great reputation. We should get a lot of applications. Truth is, we got twice the number of applications, 800 applications. We couldn't find 6 companies to invest in. We wanted to invest in 15. We only barely, we had to compromise to find 6. At this point, it became clear that there was a much bigger problem. And what part of that problem was in pipeline development. There wasn't, so in the US, for example, you have institutions like MIT and Stanford and Harvard and Yale and Dartmouth and all the Ivy Leagues and all the other great institutions producing amazing, incredible founders that have the capacity to think deeply about problems, create solutions, prototype the solutions. Most of these universities have innovation labs within the school that literally act as incubators that support startups at the early stage. Most of these schools have lecturers who are professionals in themselves in real life scenarios, working with the Googles and the Microsofts and the Facebooks and all the technology businesses. So you have people with the wealth of practical experience, mentoring and working with the next generation of minds. And we realized that was a gap that we had in our own ecosystem because our universities were not necessarily churning out the type of talent that we required to go into entrepreneurship. And if you really look at for example, the US markets, you will see quite a lot of innovation coming out of the universities. In fact, you see that the research capacity of the country is housed within universities. So you see all the different technology firms are setting up research labs inside universities. But what you see here is quite different, right? Most of the innovation are coming from much older people who mostly are returnees into the country or people who have worked in international companies before and now go out to start their own. So basically, the gap in capacity has now led to much of the work that we have to do because we now have to begin to retrain and train people before we even get them ready to be invested in.
Wow, that is so insightful. The first time I had a conversation, I really like how we went because I knew that, you would always bring the other aspect that is not readily visible. So that was really insightful to learn. So the second question, this is your first answer, we're going to deal with it again when we come to the discourse. But the second question is, so now that you had that dysfunction or you've been able to recognize that dysfunction, what is the reality shaping how you've been able to solve those problems amidst all of that?
Okay, so when we found that there was a capacity gap, one of the things we did was we spun off Ventures Platform Foundation, which is the part that I lead today. So the founder, Kola now leads the fund as the managing partner. And then I lead the foundation as the executive director. Now, on the foundation side of things, we're doing 3 main things. One of it is capacity building, which basically means a lot of training, training workshops, boot camps. That's also now where we do our incubation and acceleration programs. We also do a lot of policy influencing and policy advocacy. And then we also try to bring all the various aspects of the ecosystem together to communicate, to work together, to make sure that the ecosystem is promoted and advances. Now, on the capacity building side of things, we've been doing a lot of training. So in every program, we've embedded a training. But now, and this is like an exclusive, maybe I shouldn't say this, but we're working on something that would come out soon. I'll leave it there. But something that should, so I don't let the cat out of the bag.
No, that's
but hopefully,
fine.
before the year runs out, we'll be launching out a couple of new initiatives and products that is geared towards plugging that gap, that knowledge gap that the university is supposed to be able to plug with the educational system, and allow for more people to get the knowledge required to build out vibrant companies.
All right, awesome. Of course, yeah, we're talking private about that. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, right? So the third question to round off this trivia is, now, one of the biggest consequences of this gap is its effect on our economic outlook. But at the grassroots level, it is actually the gap between that gap and then its effect on the local economy. For example, in simpler terms, because our university environment is not enabling for the creation of entrepreneurship talent, it is holding the local economy bound of its potential, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think what do you think is creating the gap within the gap that is affecting the economy? Okay, or let me make it simpler. What is that problem defining the gap between this existing dysfunction in our educational system and its impact on the local economy?
Yeah, there are a bunch of stuff. So the first thing is that the impact on, once there's a problem with the educational system, there's going to be an impact on the economy, right? It goes without saying, especially when you're running a knowledge-based economy. If you're running an industrialized economy, then there might be little or no effect, so to speak, because industries typically don't need low-skilled. Most of the workforce are low-skilled people, so you mostly need technical or vocational institutes to get people out. In fact, many manufacturing companies just create their own vocational institute because they just can't shout, right? But when you want to run a knowledge-based economy, because now we don't have the industrialized sector as it were now, but we are trying to now leapfrog industrialization into the digitalization. Now, if you want to lead in the digital economy, then knowledge becomes key, right? And so once there's a fault in the educational system, it's going to obviously translate into the economy. Now, the question is, why is there a fault? Why is there a gap in the educational system? And I think it's a bunch of things. The first is an archaic curriculum. If you went to a Nigerian university, your lecturers were teaching you with the notes that they used when they were in school. It doesn't, how in the world does that work? Like, first of all, the curriculum is archaic. Let's not overflog that. The second thing is the policy and the cycle, what it takes to change the curriculum from my study it takes about 3 to 4 years to go through the process of curriculum review all the way for it to be passed at the House of Assembly or the Senate before it's now passed into law, before they can now institute a change. Now, in that 4 years, the curriculum that you are trying to change would have been obsolete. So it makes it very inefficient for you to even now upgrade and get better, if at all there was even the will to get better, right? The third thing is we call it the industry academia mismatch, right? Is that the academia is churning out people who the industry are not calling for. It's like a producer producing a product that nobody wants, right? When it needs to be the reverse. So the reverse is that the industry has to dictate what the academia should be producing.
Yeah.
And at what level and at what standard. It's the same way with exportation. You cannot export any product that you produce. No, you have to produce to the countries that you want to export it, their specification. They have a specification for the standards, for the equipment, for the things you need to use, for the quality. So you can't just say, and that's one of the reasons why they're saying with African countries that we are dumping grounds for fake products, because we have no standards, right? We have no requirements. But the same thing, the industry, unfortunately, is a profit-making engine. So you can't just throw people at me, for example, as a business. I will let you know what my requirements and my expectations are, but then the academia has to provide that. Now, there is a mismatch between those two. And what's part is not just a mismatch in academia, it's almost like a cultural mismatch among almost most training institutes in the country. You keep training people that can't get into paid employment because the employers are asking for something different.
Wow. Woo. Okay, it's getting a little, wow, this is really exciting. Wow, thank you so much for that. Right, so let's jump into the next level of conversation, right? Let's have the discourse. So with all of these things we've been able to identify, yes, there's a gap within the educational system, there's a gap, you know, and there's a cultural gap and all of that, right? And as I said, I know your target audience are not the undergraduates, but we, you know, so far it has been brilliant, the things you've said, and, you know, it still applies across board. So I want to refocus on that particular target, right? How do we now define the investment case? Okay, and I think you can answer this question, you know, both generally and then specifically, right? So how do we now define the investment case within these gaps? How do you define opportunity within these gaps?
Okay, so there's obviously every gap is an opportunity. Every problem is a potential business, right? And an example of companies that have seen that gap, that are harnessing the dividends of that gap, are Andela, for example. And Andela is literally has built their own training system that builds developers. Just because a computer science be bachelor's degree in Nigeria or even a master's doesn't even help you do anything, or even software engineering masters or bachelor's doesn't do anything for you. So they have seen that is a viable business, and a couple of startups that are typically Andela type startups that would train you and outsource you, because clearly it's clear that the organizations can hire the people that are coming out fresh because they are not employable, in Fela Durotoye's words. But then if I can take them, is raw material. If I can take them, retrain them, then I can outsource them, I can match them, and I can get paid. So that's one opportunity. But we still need that to be done at scale. Even Andela is not doing it at scale. Like, we need to train tens and hundreds of millions of people for us to even begin to scratch the surface of that problem. So, but we need more of that. There's a clear opportunity there between the industry academia mismatch. I also think that there is a huge opportunity for innovation being housed within universities. But this has
I was
to
waiting
be,
for that.
this can't be embedded in the educational system as it is. So
Awesome.
there has to be the willingness to create what I like to call a pseudo system
Awesome.
that runs parallel without having to distort. But
Awesome.
also this parallel system should not also be distorted by the educational system.
Leisure
Right?
system. Something
Yes, and
independent of that existing structure.
yes, and I'll give an example of somebody who has been able to do this effectively. Churches. So if you go to campuses, you have what we call the campus ministries, right, of different churches. Right now, the campus ministries have been effectively able to become a pseudo system within the school system, not affected by the school system, not affecting the school system, but running in parallel. Now we need campus ministries for innovation.
Wow. Interesting. Because, you know, this is really exciting because that's the major proposition of the venture matrix. Even in fact, matrix series 3 basically talks about such a system as proposed. So thank you so much for sharing that. So how do we define the investment case? So you've talked about where opportunity is, but how about for you investors? What makes sense, right, for the flow of capital into that environment if that pseudo system is created or built?
So the truth is that so investors are not development companies, and it's you have to be very clearly. An investor will put money as long as it's viable. we really many times don't care much. It's a viable opportunity, we'll invest, right? Even if it's a dog, if it's a singing dog that we can scale and can rake in billions, we would invest, right? Typically, that's like typical investor. Even though every investor has an investment thesis, ours is also very, very clear. We are kind of impact driven in that we want to invest in companies that are plugging infrastructural and value chain gaps and are democratizing things and making sure prosperity can flow on the continent. That's how we think about our investments. However, we can't invest in, we don't, because that will not be an investment. It's like a social investment. We don't do social investments, so to speak. So another one thing that we are crying for and advocating for within the ecosystem is that beyond the capitalistic investment, there is need for some developmental investment. And because for example, a fund cannot invest in pipeline development. Now, what's pipeline development? Pipeline development is the grunt background work that we have to do to make sure people are investable on the long run. A fund can do that because a fund literally raised money from other people and they are looking for returns on their investments. But that work needs to be done. So the question is, who does that background work so that people rise up through the chain and are now ready to collect money, right? That work for me, I think that work needs to be done by development finance, right? So the country, for example, needs to earmark money to put into that infrastructure. Development organizations that care need to put money into that infrastructure. Big technology businesses that care about deal flow pipeline, also care about customer base, need to put money into that system, right? So for me, this pseudo system, it's not an investment that you can reap a dividend from, as it were. It's an investment that is long-term, that is mind shifting, that over time you begin to see how it structurally changes the economy. So for me, the packaging needs to be to convince development and I think I'm beginning to see some of those types of proposals. I think AFDB is looking at making those kind of academia industry mismatch investments. I think that because I was part of a pilot project in Abuja, the Africa University of Science and Technology. We did a program, and now they want to do a whole hub within the school. So we're beginning to see that level of interest. We need to see more of that interest. But like I said, it's not going to be investment capital. It's going to be more development capital. Now, when that development capital is deployed and we now begin to see that process, because it's going to take a while, maybe 3 to 5 years, we now begin to see that mind shift, and then some great innovation starts coming out, then venture capital will be able to come in.
Wow, that has plugged a lot of thinking gaps now. So last question for this session is let's project, right? Development investment comes in and all of that, right? There is okay, let me ask the question like this. So in the Venture Matrix for the Future of Africa proposition publication series that I did, I mostly advocated for the creation of an enabling environment for economic value creation.
Okay.
Right. And with all of the dysfunctions that you've highlighted and even the solutions you proposed, those were the things I actually suggested or proposed in the matrix. I just had my own model, right? Okay. So how do you think investment can actually facilitate the creation of an enabling environment for economic value creation in amidst all of this dysfunction and,
what do you mean by economic value creation?
So creating things that directly impact the local economy, creating value. In your terms, the startups, the businesses, all of those models.
No, it's a very clear correlation. Like I can't remember where I was talking to somebody recently, and I told them, like, look, it's very simple. Innovation goes where capital goes. Like the reason why there is a huge, and it's not big enough though, but there is a force about the Nigerian innovation ecosystem. It's just simply because there's capital coming to Nigeria. And capital is coming to Nigeria because a lot of foreign investors are seeing the potential of the African market, which is hugely Nigerian, right? So once capital flows in this direction, you will see more and more innovations shaping up, coming up, going there. And it also shows kind of like the evolution of the Nigerian innovation ecosystem, right? We had the e-commerce boom, which was championed by the Jumias and the Kongas and the Udalas. But in the e-commerce boom, there were like over 300, I might be exaggerating, maybe about 100 different e-commerce companies. I was in Lagos at that time. I was still in school. There were a bunch of stuff people doing. Jumia for sunglasses, Jumia for wine, Jumia for food, Jumia for anything you wanted to think about. So there was the e-commerce boom. E-commerce boom died, and now we have the fintech boom. Everybody's not doing some fintech, but it's clear why this happened. Like Jumia and Konga were able to raise huge amounts of capital, so everybody felt that that's what we should do, right? Of course, over time the dust will settle, the great minds will go up, the rot will settle down. Now we have the fintech boom. Everybody's doing some form of fintech company, whether it's payments, infrastructure, or is savings or insurance or whatever it is, right? A lot of people doing that right now, or financial inclusion. But then we're also seeing how the legends are rising, and then the dust is also going to settle. So we have the pay stacks, we have the Flutter Wave, we have the piggy vests, right? Rising up on that matrix that are providing capital or providing saving solutions or providing payment solutions and the likes. So my point is, wherever capital flows, you would see innovation flowing in that direction, right? One of the sectors that had been underexposed is the educational sector, and I think that the fun part that it's a very viable sector, like very, very viable. Like if I even explain to you that you know that only about 9% of the people that write JAM will get into a university in Nigeria. And this has nothing to do with their failing. They don't have to fail. Is that all the universities in Nigeria, universities, polytechnics, colleges of education combined, their combined capacity can only take 9% of the people that are writing JAM. So you can understand why Nigeria is funding the UK's educational system, while we are funding Cyprus, we are funding Ukraine. Like if Nigerians stop going to these countries for education, their system will crash, because literally most of them have social security and their citizens don't pay tuition. So who pays? We do.
Wow.
So there's a viable market. It's big. It's money. It's literally like anybody that can. This guy, what's his name? Benny Gold. Benny something. He's in Lagos. He created an online university about 5 years ago. Now he's making a killing, and he's not even scratching the surface of the potential of that. The National Open University has thousands and thousands of students. Like that is a gold mine, and it's still not scratching the surface of the potential. So if anybody can put together something, it's going to be huge. But like I said, once capital starts flowing in that direction, that's when everybody starts thinking. But of course, there's also the room for regulation. Regulation also has a way of limiting innovation, right?
True.
And that's where policy conversations have to come in. For example, Nigeria does not record or recognize virtual schools. They say for you to have a school, you must have infrastructure. So no matter what it is, you must have a physical infrastructure for you to get the license. Think about it, right? So that's a limitation for someone who can put together great curriculum, great content, great learning material, and deploy it. You will not be able to get the Nigerian certification because there's a limitation on regulation. So it's tit for tat, right? But there's huge opportunity there.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk numbers. We're jumping right into the strategy session. So we're going to ask the tough questions to get, the practical strategy answers, right? So you talked about, let's talk numbers. So you said at the beginning, where you guys started, you had, you wanted to get 10, but you were not able to get 6, even though you had about 800 people apply.
Yeah, so the first time we had 400 and something applications. We only got 7 people instead of 10. Second time we got 6 instead of 15.
Okay, so the proposition for the venture matrix is if we can integrate if we can increase participation and inclusion of the undergraduate community into that number, right? Doesn't it give you a better chance at getting more numbers? Of course, quality is just the question, right? How do we make sure that those guys are actually entrepreneurship talent? We need to create an enabling environment, right? So with all of these factors that we've identified, and the last point you made about the flow of capital and invention being, tit for tat, right? How can the undergraduate community, amidst this dysfunction, position ourselves for the flow of capital? Because it's a chicken and egg situation. If we speak to investors and investors say, "Oh, we're sorry, we don't think you have the talent for entrepreneurship that makes whatever solution you provide viable," then how can we create the solutions that become viable? So how do we do that? How do we position ourselves to make sure that there's flow of capital for us to actually innovate and build viable solutions?
So I don't think that. So now note, I was saying that when there's a flow of capital, innovation goes in that direction, means that a lot more people are incentivized to innovate in an industry that has been perceived to have a lot of investment. Now, that doesn't mean that you can feel a need and innovate anyway, right? You can feel a need and build a company anyway, right? And that doesn't also mean that doesn't nullify the fact that even though there's a gap, that people are not building great companies out of universities.
Yes.
One of my colleagues in school we were in the same set in different departments. I was in architecture, he was in engineering. Actually, the two of them co-founders were in engineering. They built a company called Prep Class. I don't know if you know Prep Class.
No, but I think I've heard of it.
So Prep Class is an educational is an edu startup. And they basically, I don't know if they've pivoted from this now, but what they were doing the last time I checked was they were helping people match lesson teachers, basically. So you find a lesson teacher but then in school, it was a big thing because all the first class students were doing private lessons for children in secondary school. But there was no way to aggregate that demand and that supply. But voila, they did it. Now, out of school, they were already running Prep Class. They were able to raise a lot of capital from both grants to venture capital to different opportunities and awards. So they did it, right? That's one company. There's another company called Slate Cube. So there's a grant program called the Ashoka Fellowship. I don't know if you've heard about it, but the Ashoka Fellowship basically targets university students. I think you have to be the oldest, I think, maximum of 22 or so, 23 or so, to be able to apply for the Ashoka Fellowship, right? And it comes with money, it comes with investment, comes with support and all of that. So there are opportunities for people. The problem, first of all, is that a lot of young people are using their smartphones to watch YouTube and watch people twerking and Instagram, and they're not researching, they're not reading, they're not learning, right? When I was in university, I used to have this program, this Saturday program where I was training people for free, and I used to ask a question, like, how many of you want to be rich? And everybody in the class will raise up their hands and say they want to be rich. But I say, okay, if you want to be rich, how many of you have in the last 3 months have read one book on wealth creation? None. How many of you want to be entrepreneurs? You want to be a businessman? How many of you have read one book on entrepreneurship? None. So it's not going to work, right? Now we can sit down, fold our hands and cry and say that the system doesn't work. The educational system is failed. There's no capital flowing in this direction and nothing is going to happen. Or we can decide that, look, I'm going to build a company whether or not there's capital. I'm going to learn whether or not my educational system works, right? And I'm going to build out something. And we have outliers who are doing this already, right? People who are learning, teaching. In fact, the whole developer ecosystem in Nigeria is proof that you can teach yourself something. Because most developers have taught themselves. They are self-taught. Ain't no school, ain't no institution teaching shit. They sat down by themselves, went on YouTube, went on different channels, and taught themselves how to code. And many of them today are senior devs. They are raking in big money, big bucks, but they taught themselves. The same thing, I think that there needs to be some value orientation, because the truth is this: once people start teaching themselves and start building, it's a factor of demand and supply. If we do a program, out of 10, 8 of them came from, no, maybe 3 of them came from university this year. That's interesting. Next year, we done that program, 5 out of 10. Interesting. Next year, 7 out of 10. We advise ourselves now, or go and open office in the university, because clearly, clearly that is where your supply is coming from. Do you get? It will only make sense. It will just only make sense. And I think that one of the successes of CC Hub was also the fact that they position at the middle of talent. So Yaba is huge because Yaba has Unilag and Yaba Tech, and then Lasso is not too far. So that's like a lot of talent. But if people, I was in Unilag 4 years, even myself, Agbalagba, I was in Unilag for 4 years. I did not know there was CC Hub. I did not even know there was a CC Hub. Do you understand? And look at me, look at CC Hub. If I only knew, maybe I would have even blown more than I've blown now, even if though I'm even still trying to blow. The bomb is not still catching. I'm still trying to blow it, right? Maybe I would have blown, you understand? But I didn't know about CC Hub until like 2 years after university. That's when I started knowing about the innovation ecosystem, and I was right at the center of it. So I know that there are two things. So let me put it very explicitly. There is the role that we have to play. I will not lie to you, right? We have to play a more active role in academia. All of us, all the venture capitalists, all the hub owners, all the innovation companies, all the technology-led companies, we have a role to play in universities. But on the other hand, the universities, the students themselves have a bigger role to play because it's their own future, it's their own destiny, and they need to take hold of it. Did I freeze or are you frozen? Who's frozen? Is it my internet or your internet? Hello? Okay, so you can hear me, but it's his internet. Okay. So I'll just wait for him to come back on then.
Hello? Yes.
All right, you're back.
Yes, I don't know. I'm sorry about that. I think my Wi-Fi, I don't know. What happened.
It's okay.
Yeah, so please you can go on. Thank God we're streaming live on YouTube, so it's still on.
Well, I was actually done before I kind of figured like you were gone, you were frozen.
Okay. So let me.
But I ended up saying that while I still, in clear terms, there is a role that the institutions need to play. So that, in fact, there are three main actors. The first actor, or not in any order, but one actor is us, VCs, hubs, technology businesses. All of us need to find a way to give back in a way that we build communities and we ensure technology and talent transfer for the universities and the tertiary institutions. One hand. The second hand are the people there. The people there need to borrow brain and start moving themselves, whether or not we are coming. At least if we are coming and you are going, we'll meet at the middle somewhere, right?
True.
So they need to start moving. So there needs to be a lot of awareness, inspiration. There needs to be a lot of knowledge. Like many universities are oblivious of the innovation ecosystem, they're oblivious of the entrepreneurship ecosystem. They are oblivious. They just want to go to school and get good grades and come out and get a job, even though we know that the jobs might not necessarily exist. And then the third is government. There's a lot of policy work that also needs to happen to ensure that all of these things can come together. So for me, these are the three buckets of actors I would like to put together.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Now, that response is just an identification of the stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
So to define investment opportunity, right, within this undergraduate community, what are the factors that would define an enabling environment for value creation? So let's even say, okay, we listen to Mimshach, we're like, okay, awesome, everybody, let's just start creating. We'll learn how to create, we'll learn what to do. But the things to what still stands as a fact is that you cannot grow beyond your environment. So what are the factors that we need as to pay attention to for the creation of an enabling environment?
Okay, so I shared something with you the other day. Let me see if I can pull it up. So we developed a matrix, not a matrix now, but like I think we call it the building blocks of an innovation ecosystem. Let me try and pull up the document. So because we did a research in partnership with Google some years ago on the Nigerian entrepreneurship ecosystem. And in partnership with OC&C, which is an international consulting firm, we came up with what the building blocks of an ecosystem are. And so I'll just read them out to you. So the first, of course, is not necessarily the first, but one of them is financial capital. Financial capital is investments, right? And investments are a wide spectrum. So it's not just venture capital, it's also grants, it's also
developmental investments.
Exactly. So we have grant subsidies, we have individual investors, we have crowdfunding, angel investors, personal networks, venture capital, public funding, corporate investments, right? Securities in market, debt financing, all of these are under capital. So there are different opportunities for capital. There are different things we can look at when we're thinking about how do you even raise capital for your business, right? The next is culture. And culture is very, very important because it's the attitude of the people towards entrepreneurship in the first place. Now, we say that Nigerians are very, very entrepreneurial. One of the things I keep hearing everywhere I go, that Nigerians are very entrepreneurial. I think that Nigerians have to be entrepreneurial. It's not like we are very entrepreneurial. If you hunger go finish you, we are entrepreneurs out of necessity, not necessarily out of desire. Right? Because you finish school, you have seen your elder brother finish school 7 years ago, see the house. You know that, man, no job, no day. You finish with first class, see the house. So you have to start thinking about, I'll start selling shoe or start selling akara while I'm in school. But culture is very important, right? One of the things we're seeing with Nigeria is that while we are quite entrepreneurial, we're not very ambitious. And I know you prepare me for the first time. We always think that Nigerians are very ambitious. We're ambitious. It's a lie. We're not anything. Like one of the great feedbacks we got from international investors was that Nigerians, you guys are not very ambitious. And we fought it back. I'm like, no, we're ambitious. Because we did an experiment, right? In one batch of our startup program, we had 7 founders. One of them was international. He was a Belgian founder, so from Belgium, building a company in Africa. Now, we did a 4-month program. We gave everybody $20,000. Guess what? After the program, all the other companies were based in Lagos. Most of them decided to have a branch in Abuja because our program was in Abuja. But highest, they had 2 branches. Guess what? Guess where this guy was?
I can't guess.
He was in like three countries.
Whoa.
The same money, the same time. And the worst part was, he was in Belgium running his business from there.
Stop. Wow.
My point is this. When you ask a Nigerian, where do you see yourself in 5 years, Nigerian startup? Most times they will tell you, oh, I'm going to expand to Kaduna, to Port Harcourt, to Abuja. When you ask an American founder, where do you see yourself in 5 years? He says, I'm going to be in Africa and Asia and Europe. They think global. But we have lied to ourselves that the Nigerian market is a big market. It's a lie.
True.
How many people? How many markets? That's, by the way, that's culture. Then there's skilled talent. And this has to do with, now you need to know something. If you're going to build something, you need to know something. This is the voracious need and desire for knowledge in a way that you consume it and you're able to use it practically. So we need to fix talent. Then there's regulation. I already talked about regulation, right? We need to ensure that there's an enabling environment for whatever industry that you want to work in to ensure that you are able to enter that industry and thrive. Then there is networks. Now, if you're going to work within the campuses, you need to plug the campus to networks. Now, there are different networks. There are networks of investors. There are networks of hubs. There are networks of innovators. All of these things are network of mentors. All
Even
of these things,
alumni that have
alumni,
built stuff also.
you need to plug to those networks. Then there's ICT infrastructure, very important. Broadband, look at us fighting with internet. Ordinary small call, we cannot. Connectivity is huge. Power supply, NEPA will take your lights. You will not be able to work. Power is the problem. Now, amazingly, many universities in Nigeria have fixed these two problems. Many of them
amazingly
they have fiber, and they have 24-hour electricity, which is great. Which makes it a great place to start a company. The last one is market potential. This is big. Now, this question is very, very dicey, right? When people tell me that Nigeria is a big market, I tell them it's a lie. Nigeria is a big potential market.
True.
It's not
I totally agree.
An active market. And what do I mean? 200 million people with most of the people poor. It's not a market.
Yes, sir.
It's a population, right? and that's why the book by Efosa Ojoma, The Prosperity Paradox, is a very, very necessary book right now for entrepreneurs, especially in Africa. Because I remember I was in Germany and I was talking to some guy. I was like, he's about to quit his job and he wants to go into entrepreneurship and he wants to build a business. I'm like, why don't you look into Africa? Like, really, tell me about the African market. And I'm like, so there's these guys. I have these guys, my friends. So I was talking about one of our startups, Thrive Greek. I'm like, they started about a year ago and now they are doing revenues of about 300-400 million naira. Like, interesting. How much is that in dollars? They're doing about $1.5 million. Like, that's too small. And he told me about a friend that sells underwear, pints, not pants, pints. and in a year, he's doing over $5 million.
Oh my God.
So he told me that, look, your market, like, if that's what you're trying to tell me to come to Africa, it's not worth it. Now, it now made me realize that we have a population, not market. But then with the prosperity paradox, there is a market inside our population that needs to be catalyzed if the way we think about markets and the way we think about solution changes.
Yes.
So this is not the class for market creation. Otherwise, I'll go on and rant for that 2 hours on market creating innovation, how to create new markets, and the kind of solutions you're looking out for. But these are the building blocks. So again, financial, capital, culture, skills, regulation, networks, infrastructure, and market potential. If you bring all of these things together, you have a vibrant ecosystem.
Awesome. We still have. I'd like us to take one question under this segment before we round up with the forum. Right? Talk about the problems that create markets. Let's quickly talk about that in the next 10 minutes. So, now, honestly, in the venture missions for the future of Africa proposition, that is all I'm advocating for. That the students, the undergraduate environment should be responsible for market creating innovations that first directly impact our local economies for us to now create markets. Because we had Sean Burrows on the forum, and there's something he said that was really powerful. He said, what we don't know about the ecosystem, the economic value creation ecosystem of Africa, is that it is built on the informal sector, right? And those guys have not been included in this our ecosystem at all. So I propose that the undergraduate community, because their universities are placed in these local communities, should innovate market creating innovations to create markets. So how do you suppose that smile though? How do you what are the market creation innovation opportunities that you think can be best explored by the undergraduate community? And I want to know why you were smiling so sheepishly.
Because I'm not going to say this on this call so that nobody comes and holds me hostage. Anyhow, let's talk about it. So first of all, the concept of market creation is very simple. It's that it states there's something called what we call the non-consumption or non-consumers. Now, non-consumers are people who on a very good day want to use the product, but they can't use it because of certain barriers. Now, there is the financial barrier. They can't afford it. 2, there is the knowledge barrier. They don't understand it. 3, there's the access barrier. They can't reach it, right? It doesn't mean that they don't want it. It doesn't mean that they don't need it. It doesn't mean that it won't help them, right? If it was structured in a different way. And I'll give you an example. Now, the book explained Mo Ibrahim and Celtel and how that now in Nigeria, when we think about telco, we think about it in Nigerian context. Once you leave this country, it's very different. You cannot buy recharge card.
Mm.
You know, here you just go out and just say, "Hey, Malam, recharge card." They don't have recharge card outside the country, outside Africa. They do subscription model. So you pay a subscription that gives you access to data and talk time. Now, when Mo Ibrahim was coming to Africa, he knew that subscription model no go work. No, ain't nobody got that kind of money to pay for a month, right? So the model they brought here is a different model to attack our market, where you can pay as you go, where you can buy small things. Now, another company that has figured this out effectively are the FMCGs. FMCGs means fast mover consumer. Have you noticed that in Nigeria, everything is in sachets?
Yeah.
Toothpaste sachet, body cream sachet, shampoo sachet, even cornflakes, even Kellogg's came to Nigeria and they did sachet cornflakes. Why? The truth is that people that buy small end up spending more money than the people that buy bulk. But the problem is that the people that spend they don't have all the money. They are paid daily wages. So they can't afford to. So when you are paid monthly, you can do subscription. When you are paid daily, you are looking for daily sustenance.
Yeah.
So you cannot go and buy a whole carton of milk. No, you will buy 1 10 naira sachet milk, 10 naira sachet Milo. Do you understand?
That you use your Gary.
Exactly, right? Now this is the value. We need to find a way to sachet innovation.
Wow. You have a lot of quotables on this session. Wow, amazing. All right, so let us round up the session with the forum, right? So what is that one thing that you think the undergraduate, I don't know if after all of these conversations, you still have those, what do I call it? You know, first time we talked, we had this, what do I call it? Opposite, was not really opposite views. It was just, can you help me with the word, right? But I hope with this session right now, it's a little more aligned. So I want, okay. So what's the one thing that you think would help unlock our investment potential as the undergraduate community? If we were to focus on one thing that we'll focus on, let's say for the next 4 months or 1 year, what is that one thing you think we need to do that would unlock that potential and make, you know, the flow of capital a more realistic conversation for that community? Because with all of the things you've said, right, it is pointing to the fact that if we can fix that undergraduate community environment, we can fix our economic value creation dysfunction. So what is that one thing you think we need to focus on right now?
Build partnerships.
Wow. Okay.
Build a bridge of partnership that allows all of us that know that we need to be played in that space but don't have the time, and it's just somewhere in our pipeline to come in now. So the question is, what is the ventures platform's barrier from setting up universities? What is it? What is Google's barrier? What is Facebook's barrier? What is Andela's barrier? What is the barrier of entry? If you can bridge that gap, we will all be there.
Wow. Okay. I love that it was short, precise, but yet still very powerful. Mimshach, we have a lot of talk. You know, we have a lot of talk because, you know, you've said the things that the whole venture matrix for the future of Africa is proposing. So we'll have a lot of backdoor conversations, right? So thank you so much. We've spent exactly 1 hour with you. In fact, we still have about 8 more minutes, you know, but I know you've got to attend to other things. So thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time
but if
invested
anybody
with
else,
us.
if anybody that's in the audience has a question, I can take 1 or 2 questions before the time elapses.
All right, awesome.
Except we don't do that.
We don't do that, but of course, since we have extra time, I will allow for it. So if anyone has questions in the comments, you can just ask in the comment section before we round up the session. And of course, as we normally do it, show your excitement, show your appreciation, share the learning points you've had so far so that Mimshach can know that you've been following and participating. Okay, I don't think we'll have questions. So the way the venture metrics leaders program is structured is that we learn so that we can do, and then we ask questions later, right? So now that we've been able to connect with you, don't worry, we'll have a lot of questions for you very, very, very soon. So thank you so much, Mimshach, for joining us. You've been amazing. This has been such an impactful session. I couldn't have asked for better. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, Mimshach. So have a great day.
Wait. Somebody said something. What do you think is the future of e-commerce in Nigeria?
Okay.
How has the journey been to where you are now? It's like there are questions. This is okay.
Okay. Please respond.
Future of e-commerce. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not very keen about e-commerce. So I really don't have anything to say there. We also don't invest in e-commerce. So I've had no reason to look into that industry. How's my journey been to where I am now? It's been hard, it's been grind, it's been a lot of work, and I'm still working. But it's been a lot of self-learning. It's been a lot of reaching out to people who I think can mentor me and being accountable to those people. There's a lot of reading and exposure. So and being able to look for opportunities and take a hold of them personally. So that's been my journey so far.
Okay, awesome.
Many of the things I'm doing today, I had to do them at a very low scale, teaching secondary school kids about entrepreneurship, reading books and stuff. So yeah. What then is the motivation? I'm not sure what this means though.
Okay, let me ask one question that I think still aligns with this. What do you think is the biggest investment case for Nigeria or Africa right now that you think would directly impact? And I don't want to assume, because I know you've talked about it. You mentioned the educational efforts. I don't want to point, but let's talk to you as, okay, Mimshach, you have that money now. What is the biggest investment case or portfolio that you can, almost not, what's the word? Not doubt, or of course, it's still a little speculative, but what is that big investment case for Africa and Nigeria that, is worth betting on?
What will I invest in?
Yes.
Agriculture.
Okay.
People will always eat.
Okay.
Africa has over 60% of the world's arable farmland. If I were a billionaire, I would build out large farms in different countries. Yeah.
All right. Noted. Thank you so much. Awesome. I don't think there are any more questions. Okay. Right. I don't think we have any more questions. So thank you so much, Mimshach. This is much appreciated. As I said, I hope we get to have a lot more conversations, because all of the things that you said were the things that I already had in mind and even outlined in the proposition. So I'm requesting openly, Mimshach, that you actually take time to read the publications when you have time to. As I said, the publication is a qualitative recount, right, of a proposition. It is not the kind of data sets, analytics, and all of that kind of reports.
Yes, I saw them. Yeah.
Awesome. And also a book will be published on that proposition by the end of this month. So as I said, we have a lot of conversations to have, and most of the things you said are things in the pipeline being worked on by myself and my team. So we'll definitely, we would even obviously have to partner up very soon.
No problem. When you're ready, let me know.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Mimshach. Do have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, bye. So So we've come to the end of today's session on the forum, and we just had an amazing, insightful session with people who speak what I call the ego lang. That's what my friend calls it. People who speak the money, people who are explorers of opportunity. And we had Sean Burrows, and then we had Mimshach, Obioha, and that concludes the sessions on Series 3, The Matrix. The next session, we'll be talking about the creation of institutions, the rise of institutions, Series 4. And we'll be having amazing, amazing people on the forum to give us insights and engage us with practical routes of action that we can take as the undergraduate community to position ourselves to unlock the prosperous destiny of Africa. So have a great time.